ladies and gentlemen, you need your solving linear equations foldable so that you can record some notes as you listen to this video. You should have 4 flaps for each of the types of equations that we are going to work through, and I've leveled them for you, generally according to complexity. So level 1 will have rational coefficients, level 2 uses the distributive property, level 3 has variables on both sides of the equal sign, and then level 4 is a mixed level, so all 3 of those are at play. Okay, let's get started with level 1. So open that flap, and we should see exactly what we're looking for to identify this type of situation. We're looking for fractions in front of the variable. So in this example, it would be my 2/5. Now we know before we solve, we've got to first identify the operations that we see. And so as I look at my equation, I'm hunting for my variable x. And in this equation, I only have 1. And then I need to identify what's happening to my variable. I see that my x is being multiplied by 2 and divided by 5, and then I'm adding 1. So we have multiplication, division, and addition in this equation. And so we know in order to solve, we're going to have to undo those operations. Remember, with solving, we're going to use our rules of the road in reverse because we are undoing. So first, we're going to look at that addition that we have identified, and we're going to undo that. The inverse of addition is subtraction. So subtract 1. Anything you do to one side, you must do to the other. And then draw a line and update what you have on each side of your balance scale. So I have my 2/5 x. Positive 1 and negative 1 is 0. That doesn't need to be written. And then I have a negative 11 and a negative 1. Adding that up, combining your like terms would be a negative 12. Okay, next operation, now that we've finished our addition, we want to go to our division. Remember, if we're following our order of operations, we're simplifying, we're cleaning up. And so in that cleanup process, we follow the rules of the road. Multiplication and division happens from left to right. Addition and subtraction happens from left to right. So when we're solving and we're going in reverse, you guessed it, we're going to do division and then multiplication. So looking at my fraction bar, I know that is the operation of division. So dividing by 5, I'll undo that by using its inverse, multiply. So I'll multiply by 5. Anything you do to one side, you must do to the other. Now, if fractions are not your friend, we know multiplying fractions, we go straight across the top, straight across the bottom. So numerator times numerator, 5 times 2 is 10. And then 10 divided by 5 would be 2. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. That simplifies, and we just have 2x remaining. And then negative 12 times 5 is a negative 60. So we've taken care of the division. All we have left is the multiplication. Side by side means multiply. So that's 2 times x. To undo the multiplication, we'll use its inverse operation of division. So divide by 2, divide by 2. And x is equal to negative divided by a positive is negative, and 60 divided by 2 is 30. So x equals negative 30. Perfect. So what I would like for you to do is to pause this video and work with your shoulder partner. I want each of you working individually to solve this equation, 3/2 x minus 2 equals 22. And then when you finish, compare and see if you arrived at the same solution. If not, where did you have differences from each other, and see if you can resolve that. Go ahead and push pause. Okay, let's check your solution. So I am looking to see what operations I have. I see subtraction, I see multiplying by 3, I see dividing by 2. So same identification that we had last time in our foldable. And so we're ready to solve. We're going to undo these operations so we can find our mystery weight for x. All right, the inverse of subtraction is addition, so add 2, add 2. Update, 3 halves x is equal to 24. Okay, so subtraction is taken care of. Next up, division. To undo dividing by 2, the inverse operation is multiplication. So multiply by 2 times 2 times 2. And 2 times 3 is 6. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 3x now equals 48. Okay, division's taken care of. Next, we're looking at our multiplication. 3 times x, sitting side by side, means multiply. We use our inverse for multiplication is division. So divide by 3, divide by 3. X is equal to 16. Nice job. Let's go to our next flap. Level 2, we're using the distributive property. That means that we're looking for parentheses with a number in front of those parentheses. So as I spy my parentheses for x plus 6 in this equation, I notice there's a 2 in front of that. Again, side by side means multiply, so we're going to have to use our distributive property. That 2 is shoved right up against the parentheses, which means the 2 gets multiplied by every piece inside. Not just 2 times x, but also 2 times 6. Now, this negative 9 that we have up front, does that touch the parenthesis? It is not sitting side by side, so we are not multiplying by a negative 9. If that really bothers you, we talked about how you can rearrange as long as you keep all your terms intact and you use your correct signs. You can write your 2 times your parentheses first and then put your minus 9 at the end. If you like that better, then go ahead and rearrange that. Your order doesn't matter because addition is commutative. So go ahead and do 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 6 is 12. So we've distributed. Everything else that we have in our equation will remain the same. And then we need to do some cleanup. What can we combine? Do I have any other x's? Nope, that's my only one. But I do see that I have a constant of positive 12 and a constant of negative 9. Now those I can combine together, and that would be a total of a positive 3. Remember, you've got to call the sign. Unless it comes right up front, like this positive 2x, I don't have to write a plus then. But for my 3, I definitely do. Okay, so now that we have it all cleaned up, this looks a little more familiar, and we are ready to solve. So let's undo the operations that have happened to x. So check your operations. I have x times 2, so there's a multiplication, and then after that we have added 3. So those are the 2 pieces that I need to undo. The inverse of addition is subtraction. So let's go ahead and subtract 3 from both sides and update. Now on the left side of my scale, I just have 2x because this totals 0. And then on the right side, 28 minus 3 is 25. Okay, and so then next, we need to undo our multiplication. So 2 times x, sitting side by side, means multiply. The inverse of multiplication is division. So I'll divide by 2, divide by 2. And that will leave me 1x, or x equals 25 divided by 2. Now, if you don't like that top-heavy fraction, then you're more than welcome to give me a decimal. 12 and a half, so 12.5, 12 and 5 tenths. I would prefer no mixed numbers. Okay, so you try one. Between you and your shoulder partner, again, you're working solo on your table with your expo. Solve the following equation. Again, there's some cleanup that needs to happen before you can get to that solving process. So go ahead and push pause, and after you have discussed and you're ready to check for accuracy, come back and push play. Okay, let's check and see what operations we have here. I've got some cleaning up to do because I see a set of parentheses. Although there's nothing inside that I can combine because 2x and positive 7 are not like terms. One has a variable, the other is a constant. So I can't combine those, but I do notice that I have a negative sitting in front of that parenthesis. That is technically an invisible negative 1. And sitting side by side means multiply. So we need to distribute that negative 1, multiply by negative 1, both terms inside the parentheses set. So negative 1 times 2x would be a negative 2x. Negative 1 times 7 would be a negative 7. And then the remaining part of our equation stays the same. Now we're ready to combine like terms because I notice we have a constant here of negative 7 and a constant here of positive 5. Those are like terms because they're both constants, so we can combine that. Negative 7 and a positive 5 makes a negative 2. Again, remember to call your sign. So everything else will stay the same, negative 2x. Now minus 2 equals a negative 8. And now we are ready to roll and solve. We're ready to undo these operations. So what operations are we working with? I spy subtraction here, and I spy this negative 2 is shoved right up against the x, which is multiplication. So I have subtraction and multiplication. Which will I undo first? Remember, we're working in reverse, so we'll undo that subtraction. The inverse of subtraction is addition, so add 2, Negative 2x, and that's 0, so I don't need to write that total, is now equal to negative 8 plus 2. I have more negatives. How many more? 6 more. So negative 6. Negative 2x equals negative 6. And undo our multiplication. Inverse operation for multiplication is division. So divide by negative 2. Divide by negative 2. And that would give us x equals negative divided by negative is a positive 3. Okay, nice job. So let's go to our third flap. Level 3 is when we have variables on both sides. So in this instance, when you're looking at your equal sign, you notice on this left side, we have a variable of x. And then you'll notice on the right side, it's not just a constant like it was in the last two examples. Here we have a variable on the right side as well. Now, what that means is that we are going to have to combine our x's and combine our constants. But notice we're working on two different sides of the equation. We can't just cross over that equal sign like it's not there. We can only combine things that are on the left side with other like terms on the left side, or combine terms that are on the right side that are like terms. So if we need to move some things around, we can do that, but we need to follow our operations, right? The rules of the road keep us safe, gives us order. That way we're all working under the same constraints. So let's go ahead and see, what do you want to do first? What operations do you see? Okay, notice that we have an addition on the left side here. I have subtraction on the right side. Those are some options that we have going. Now we do know that 10 and 6 are both shoved right up against a variable. So we've got some multiplication in the mix as well. So if we are looking at our options, we are going to start with addition, subtraction. You choose. What do you want to undo? You have some options here. You could undo the 3, or you could undo the negative 15. That's your choice. Most people prefer to have their variables on the left side, which means they would want their constants on the right side. And so if that's you, then you would want to undo the addition. The inverse of addition is subtraction. So subtract 3, subtract 3. Draw a line and bring it down. What do we have on the left side? 10x, technically plus 0, is now equal to 6x minus 18. Okay, so I have my constants together, but I don't have my variables on the same side. So we're still cleaning up, looking to see what we have going. If I want my variables on the left side, and on the right side I have a 6x, you have to think about that. You know that this is a positive 6x. So it's like a 6x is being added to the negative 18. And how do we undo addition? Inverse operation is subtraction. So subtract 6x, subtract 6x. Draw your line and bring it down. Update, what's on your scale now? 10 minus 6 would give you a total of 4x. This is 0, so that variable term isn't on the right side anymore. And then we still have our negative 18. Okay, so last thing that we have to undo, we had extra sets of addition and subtraction to undo. And so we've taken care of that. Now we need to undo the multiplication, right? 4 times x, because they're sitting side by side. Inverse operation for multiplication is division. So divide by 4, divide by 4. And x is equal to a negative 18 fourths. Now, that can be simplified. 18 and 4 are both divisible by 2. I know so because they're even numbers. So that would be a negative 9 halves. Again, if you would prefer to give me a decimal, negative 4 and a half, negative 4.5 is fine. I would prefer that we avoid mixed numbers. Okay, so you try. You and your shoulder partner, you know the drill. Solve this equation. Go ahead and push pause so you can take some time to do that and get to an agreement, and then come back and push play to check for accuracy. Okay, let's check for accuracy. So looking at this equation, again, we see lots of operations. We have some subtraction here and here. Definitely we have multiplication in the mix. But what I notice the most is that I have a variable on the left side and a variable on the right side. So we need to get our variables on the same side. So we need to undo that for sure. And then we'll start working towards solving. So if we want to undo this subtraction, then we would use our inverse operation of subtraction, which is addition. So add 5x, which would give me 2 plus 0, still 2, equals 6 plus 5 gives me a total of 11x minus 20. So I have my variables together now. I only have an x on the right side. That may bug you. You could have just as easily moved to the 6x instead of the 5x. Totally up to you. You just have to make sure you're undoing the operation that you're working with. So in this case, I would want my constants to be on the left side. What's out of place? This negative 20. Inverse of subtraction is addition. So add 20, add 20. And then let's update and see what our scale says now. 22 is equal to 11x plus 0. Okay, last step, undo your multiplication. So the inverse for multiplication is division. Divide by 11, divide by 11. So 2 is equal to x. Same solution as x is equal to 2. You can trade those sides if you want to, just to have your habits. Okay, last one. Let's look at our fourth option, which is our mixed level. So that includes all of the above. You have rational coefficients and distributive property and variables on both sides. So that's a hot mess, but we can do it. We're just going to have to do some cleanup before we start solving. Okay, so if I need to clean up, that means I'm going to simplify. And so I'm going to follow my order of operations. Right? This is if we simplify. Exactly as we see them in that order. Parentheses, exponents, multiply and divide from left to right, add and subtract from left to right. So what cleanup do I have that I need to work through? I see parentheses, can't combine anything inside because they're not like terms. I have a constant and a variable term with that coefficient of 9. But I do notice in front of my parentheses, I have a 2/3. So this takes us back to rational coefficients. Go look at level 1 to refresh your memory. We need to work with our rational coefficient and also level 2 of multiplying that 2/3 by everything in the parentheses. So 2/3 times 3. 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. 2/3 times 3. That's 3 over an understood 1. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. And 6 divided by 3 gives us the 2. Okay, let's go again. We're going to do 2/3 times a negative 9x. So 2/3 times a negative 9x. That looks like subtraction. Hang on. There we go. 2 times negative 9 is a negative 18x. And then 3 times 1 is 3. And so negative 18x divided by 3 would give us a negative 6x. So we have 2 minus 6x equals 7 minus x. And now it looks just like level 3 with variables on both sides. So we need x's on one side, numbers on the other, right? Move those constants together and those variable terms together. So we're undoing. We have a negative x on this right side. If you want your variables on the left, undo that subtraction. So we would add x, and then update your scale. This would be 2. Negative 6 plus 1 would be a negative 5x equals 7 plus 0. Okay, next up, I would want my constants to be together. And so looking at my 2, I want it to be on the right side. Right now it is a plus 2. It's being added to that negative 5x. We just don't see the plus because it's up front. We know it's a positive 2. It's understood when it's the first term. So undoing addition is subtraction. So now let's see what we have. 0 plus a negative 5x is equal to 7 minus 2 is 5. Last piece to undo would be our multiplication. So we took care of a lot of addition and subtraction. Now we're moving on up our ladder because on this side we're solving. So this is where we undo in reverse. So undoing multiplication. Inverse for multiplication is division. Divide by negative 5, divide by negative 5. So x is equal to negative 1. Great. Okay, let's try this one. In Expo, on your table, let's solve this equation that has the mixed levels. Go ahead and push pause so you can work. Double check with your shoulder partner and have the discussion about your process, and then come back and push play to check for accuracy. Okay, let's check for accuracy. First thing that we see is this parenthesis set, right? That jumps out at us. And so we know when we see parentheses, we want to check to see if we can combine any like terms. In this case, we can't. So we move outside of the parentheses and see a number shoved right up against the parentheses. That 3/4 is being multiplied by the parentheses set, which means we have to distribute 3/4 times each of those terms. So 3/4 times 4 and 4x, and 3/4 times the negative 12. We need to work through both of those. So this is actually 4x over an understood 1. If you want to look at that as a fraction, keep your levels straight. 3 times 4 would give us 12x. 4 times 1 would be 4. And 12 divided by 4 would be 3x. Okay, let's do the same thing with 3/4 times negative 12. This is negative 12 over an understood 1. So 3 times negative 12 is a negative 36. 4 times 1 is 4. And negative 36 divided by 4 is a negative 9. Okay, so that side, the left side, is cleaned up. We haven't done anything to the right side. And now we see I have a variable of x here on the left side and on the right side. Remember, they're on opposite sides. So if you want to combine them, you're going to have to undo those operations and move them to the same side so that you can combine like terms. So let's say we want our variables to be on the left side. Then we have a subtract x. Inverse for subtraction is addition. So add 1x, add 1x. Draw your line and bring it down. Let's update. 3x plus x would be 4x minus 9 equals 3 plus 0. And now we just have one variable. That's better. But we will have a constant that's out of place. This negative 9 needs to be on the opposite side of the variables, so it needs to go to the right side of the equation. We've got to undo that. Undoing subtraction. Inverse for subtraction is addition, so add 9, add 9. Draw your line and let's update. 4x plus 0 is equal to 3 plus 9 is 12. Good, and then the only thing we have left to undo is our multiplication. Inverse for multiplication is division, so we're going to divide by 4, divide by 4. So x is equal to 12 divided by 4 is 3. Okay, great. So it looks to me like you are ready for some practice. So in your iNotebook, you're going to dedicate 2 pages to homework 1.1.1, and you'll have some equations to solve, and then you have a link to a Google form to submit your final solutions. So I should get solutions submitted through that form, but then I will also check for your evidence in your iNotebook. So make sure that you are showing your thought process. Make that thinking visible in writing.